Just want to thank everybody for agreeing to meet today at short notice during our recess. I mean, we know why we're here. The meeting has been convened. Sorry, I should take this off while I'm talking. The meeting has been convened to receive a briefing from departmental officials on the SR on the allocation of COVID-19 funding to agriculture producers. So just to let everybody know, we have Claire, Harry, Rosemary and William online via Starleaf, and myself and John are here in room 30. So just can I advise members that the committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online, and members are welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and all devices are muted. We also have apologies from Morris, Patsy and Declan as well. So just moving on then, so what we're here to discuss SL1, the Agricultural Commodities Coronavirus Income Support Scheme 2020 and the support to the Ornamental Horticulture sector. Can I refer members to the correspondence from the department at between pages 5 and 55 in our agenda, and a copy of the Hansard of the meeting on 1st of July 2020, which is at pages 56 to 72. Members will recall that the committee received a briefing on the subject from the Minister on the 22nd of May and the 1st of July 2020 regarding the allocation of 25 million additional funding to support farming and horticulture business. The SL1 that is before us today for consideration is the Agricultural Commodities Coronavirus Income Support Scheme. This SL, which deals with the support to the SL, which deals with the support to the ornamental horticulture sector, is not yet available. However, the officials, when they're given their brief, will brief us on that at today's meeting. And when the SL1 is ready, it can be considered by members without the need for calling the officials back. The department has further advised that the scheme will come into operation at the end of this month and will break the 21-day rule. The department feels on this occasion that this is necessary in order to make payments as soon as possible to farmers facing financial difficulties. So I'm just going to welcome hopefully our officials to the meeting, Norman Fulton, Grade 3, Head of Food and Farming Group, and Stephen Miller, Grade 5, Head of Brexit Contingency, Agri-Food Trade. So can I just invite the officials perhaps to begin their briefing?
Stephen Miller's there anyway.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just want to check, can you hear me okay? Yeah.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Yeah, unfortunately, technical problems. My system's not allowing me to download the software to run the Starleaf system, so I'm afraid I have to phone in to this one, so apologies for that. So if it's okay, I'll just go straight into giving you a brief overview of the support scheme that is being proposed in this piece of legislation. So this gives effect to the decisions announced by the Minister at the start of July, providing support to those who are most directly impacted by the effect of COVID-19 on agricultural markets. So this piece of legislation covers beef and veal, sheep, dairy and potatoes, and as you mentioned, there will be separate legislation covering ornamental horticulture, and I'll come back to that at the end. So on the dairy side then, this takes a form of a payment of 1.28 pence per litre for milk supplied to purchasers from the 1st of March to the 30th of June. But excluded from that is milk, which was sold on contract above a price of 26.68 pence per litre. On the sheep side, it's a headage payment of £6.88 per head for animals slaughtered or exported for slaughter from the 22nd of March to the 18th of April. Again, that's the period that was affected by the impact of COVID-19 on markets. In the case of beef and veal, there are three separate headage payments reflecting the more complex nature of the market effects within that sector. So the first payment of £33 per head for animals 8 months and over is for those slaughtered between the 16th of February and the 30th of June. And this is a period when there was an impact on fifth quarter and hides, and so that did impact the market returns coming back to primary producers. There's then an additional payment of £40 per head for animals 12 months and over slaughtered between the 29th of March and the 16th of May. And this is when there was a more acute step down in the market for finished cattle. And there's also a separate additional payment for veal calves, rosé veal, so it's animals between 8 and under 12 months of age, of £13.50 per head, and that is for those slaughtered between the 5th of April and 23rd of May. So what we're seeking to try and do here is focus the payments to reflect both the market movements and those who are most impacted. So in the case of both cattle and sheep, because we're seeking to focus the payment on the producer who actually incurred the loss, rather than necessarily the one who presented for slaughter, the payment will go to the person who was holding the animal at the point at which markets stepped down. Now that may well be the person who presented the animal for slaughter, but it could also be the previous owner. So some of these payments will go to individuals who may have sold advanced stores, heavy stores, during the period impacted by the market disturbance. In that way, we're seeking to really focus the payment to those who took the loss. In the case of the potato sector, this is for processing potatoes, a payment per tonne up to a maximum of £136 per tonne against actual losses incurred between the 17th of March and the 31st of July, so effectively the end of the marketing season for the 2019 crop. So losses determined against invoiced sales or potatoes that remained unsold as verified by a departmental inspector between the 22nd and the 31st of July. So in terms of the extent of the payment, this is a contribution towards the losses incurred. So in case of beef and sheep, the payments are set at 100% of the assessed losses, reflecting the fact that the beef and sheep sector are more vulnerable. Has come through a period of sustained weak returns for 2 years. And also fewer of the beef and sheep producers could have availed of the additional COVID-19 measures that were generally available from the government. In the case of dairy and potatoes, the level of support is set at 80% of the assessed losses, recognising the fact that other support measures were available and were being used by producers within these particular sectors. So the beef, sheep and dairy payments will all be driven by data that is already in the possession of the department. So therefore this makes it a simple process for applicants.
Ask Stephen to come in. We've lost Norman. If we could ask Stephen to come in.
Okay, seem to have lost Norman there. Stephen, can I ask you maybe to come in and pick up where Norman was at?
Okay, can you hear me?
You may need to turn your volume up, Stephen. We can hear you, but only very faintly.
Okay, wait to see if I can do it. Because I'm struggling to find how to turn the volume up. Because I like Norman.
Oh, you're getting louder now?
It's better now, yeah.
Is that better now?
That's better.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out where Norman had got to there. He was talking about the payments to
I
beef
think
producers.
he was just about to start on the horticulture stuff.
Yeah.
In terms
He was just finishing by saying that the information for the beef, cattle and sheep and dairy within the department, so it would be easy in terms of payments. So I'm making the assumption he was going to move on to the horticulture aspect.
Okay, because I had lost contact for a wee while as well. So the potatoes was the next one to talk about, and what we are doing there is asking those potato producers who were supplying the potato processing market during the period from middle of March through to the end of July to make an application outlining the losses that they had incurred and to support that with invoices and bank statements. We have already done an inspection of stores for those producers who still had potatoes left at the end of July. So it's a combination of the two, those potatoes that were unsold and those potatoes that were sold at a loss during the early summer period whenever the market collapsed. Ornamental horticulture, we are doing in a similar way. We're looking at the losses ornamental horticulture producers incurred during the springtime from the period 1st of March to the 30th of June, and we're going to ask them to give evidence of sales in the previous 3 years and then compare that with sales this year to identify the loss that was incurred, and then we would make an assessment of that loss based on the information provided.
Okay.
I think that's a summary of what we were trying to do.
Okay, thank you. We're just going to open it up to members' questions now. So I have lost the picture of our members via Starleaf. So you might just have to shout and come in. Sorry, not your back. I've got your pictures back. So if people can indicate just by raising their hand, or John here, I call you to speak. John?
Yeah, Chair, thank you, and can I thank the officials as well for joining us with the report this morning. I should probably also remove this when I'm speaking. Chairman, the question is, we've already been given previously oversight of the different components of the financial assistance available, and we're aware of the contingency which has been built there in there after requests from this committee, and I myself asked a number of questions around that. What I'm keen to know is if there's any further contingencies that could be made, for example, for emerging need that may be greater than that first predicted, such as that which we're now seeing in recent days from issues at meat plants, where businesses and producers might need additional help if that situation worsens, and I have some concerns around that, based on, to summarise, whether or not the contingency built in there will be enough if that becomes a problem.
Okay. There's a small amount of money still left from the original £25 million unallocated that we were holding back to deal with any future emerging requirements. We had also made a bid as part of the last monitoring round for other support, should it be needed, if there was the type of incidents we're now seeing, second wave impacts. So while we don't have sufficient money to deal with that currently, we are aware that that may be required and have made a market bid to the Department of Finance for that.
Okay. And just because nobody else has indicated, kind of following on from the point John made, and within the paper there's multiple language used for, particularly within the beef sector. So you've got beef sector, beef producers, beef finishers, without much detail in terms of defining that. And then within the SR, it kind of talks more generally about beef producers. So I'm just wondering, given the question that John has asked, if there is need for a financial package for a sector that's maybe not currently being dealt with in this, does this SR cover that, given the language used, or would you have to come back with an additional SR?
We would have to come back with a different one. This one's purely focused on those animals that were slaughtered during the period in question, and we would have to come again with another SR if we were looking at a different period or a different focus.
Fair enough. Have any of the other members via Starleaf any questions they'd like to ask Stephen? Claire? Go ahead, Claire.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for that. I have a couple of questions. I noticed in the pack, Stephen, you mentioned the funding that is being held back still, but in the pack there says that 3.6 million of the residual funding has been reprioritised within DERA. Have you any indication of what that is going to be used for?
No. that was money that Deirdre reprioritised earlier in the year to use for COVID emergencies, and it's sitting there along with the 3.4 that was out of the 25. So effectively we have 7.2 million available to us to deal with future emerging needs.
Okay, and that 7.4 million is split into two lumps of 3.6.
Sorry, it was 7.2. It's three lumps of 3.6.
Yeah, and but of so that one of those blocks is going back into the department, but we don't know what that's going to be used for at all just yet.
No, we haven't identified a requirement for it yet. It's there to be used if required.
Okay, there was another bit that come up for me then as well. So in the pack, you identified that the average beef farm income sits at below 15,000 per year, and the average dairy farm income is sitting at about 50,000 per year. And I'm just wondering, has there been any discussion or sense that those farms on a lower income will be prioritised according perhaps to their potential risk of bankruptcy or future poverty risks? Have they been used as indicators or measures when allocating any funds?
Are you talking about the current allocation of funding?
Yeah.
No, the current allocation of funding was purely based on the market prices of the sectors that we were supporting, and it was dependent on who had the animals or who was producing the milk. And we weren't using what they were currently earning as part of that calculation. Those figures for farm incomes were used to make the case initially to the Department of Finance that there was a need.
And is there any sense in the department that we are going to be losing some of those lower income farms due to the extra pressure from COVID?
There's no evidence to support that as yet. This time next year, whenever we see the annual census, that might become apparent.
Okay. Any other questions? I just have one additional question, Stephen. Just in terms of the note from Michael Oliver to Stella, committee clerk, it's saying that payments of £40 per head would target those producers impacted most when beef prices fell significantly following lockdown from March to May, and the additional payment of £33 per head for cattle slaughtered in the period 16th of February to 30th of June 2020. But when you look at the SR section 6.2, A and B refers to payments of £40. So I'm just wondering, should one of those, part A, not have been the £33 per head? Or have I read that wrong?
The £33 is for every animal slaughtered during the period middle of February to the end of June. The £40 is an additional payment on those animals that were slaughtered during the 7-week period when the market price fell significantly. So some farmers will get £73, some will get 33, so a combination, depending on when the animal was slaughtered within that date range.
Okay, sorry, I had read that wrong. That's fair enough. Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions, I just want to thank Stephen, Norman, previously.
Rosemary wants to come in.
Oh, sorry, Rosemary. Go on ahead.
This doesn't seem to be working, is it? I can't see that.
Yeah, can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can.
No?
Rosemary, yep.
Yes.
Right. I want to ask in relation to, it's the cattle premium. Okay. In relation to that, how will farmers be notified? And particularly, you have farmers that have sold their cattle at the mart. Farmer A sells his cattle at the mart to Farmer B, who has it slaughtered within 4 days or 5 days of buying it. How will the department know to send out the documentation to make a claim to Farmer B then?
Okay.
You know, not the farmer that sold it to the slaughterhouse, but the farmer that sold it originally.
Yeah. Okay. APHIS animal database holds all of that information as to who held the animal at any point in time. So those dates that we have set as the key dates for payments, we will identify who had the animal on those dates, and those are the people we will be then writing to say you're eligible. And whenever the forms paperwork goes out, we will say to people, if they believe if they believe the information we've given is wrong, then they can contact us to query that and go back into APHIS and look to make sure the information is correct. But it's our systems we will use to derive that that payment data.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
I just
Okay.
want to ask William and Harry, just ask William and Harry if they want a question.
William and Harry, just given that we can't see you, are you happy, or have you any questions you'd like to ask? William, you're maybe on mute. We can't hear you, William. We can see you moving, but we can't hear you.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello? No, I didn't pick up the last response. I picked up from Norman that how cattle sold in livestock marts that went straight onto the factory, is that payment going to go back to the original owner or to the dealer that went to the factory?
That will go back to the farmer. Factories aren't an eligible herd keeper, so they won't be getting the money. A dealer might get the money if they took the financial loss, depending on the date that they bought the animal. What we're trying to do is make sure the people who took the loss got the support. So it's all about the date the animal was sold.
Yeah, well, that'll be for, I've just put a number of days that it has to be in the herd of the person that killed the animal then, is there?
In a roundabout way, it depends when the animal was sold and the date upon which triggered the funding. We had looked at one time about having a retention period, but that didn't really work whenever we looked at some of the examples. And it meant that some of the people who actually had the loss didn't get the money and vice versa. So by looking at trigger dates and who owned the animals in those dates, that's how we will target the money, and that way that the people who had the loss should get the funding.
Yeah, well, that's a wee bit more difficult to administrate, isn't it?
It is.
No?
It is. Yeah.
It is, I thought so, yeah. Okay.
We believe it's a more targeted and more accurate approach.
Yeah, and absolutely, I'd agree if that's doable. Okay.
Harry, have you any points or questions?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. No, I'd be reasonably content with all that. I mean, I think, as William says, it is a bit more complicated, but it's a fair system, so it's hitting people where the loss is. So, yep, thank you. Good.
And Stephen, just before we wrap up, have you any idea when the first payments will actually get out there to the farmers, and how long the process of payment will take? And then just finally, when you think you'll be in a position to move on the ornamental horticulture payments?
Okay.
Claire wants in with another question.
We hope to open the programme, the scheme, the first week of September. We're almost there. We have a few bits and pieces to do this incoming week, and we would like to open first week of September. It will be open for 2 weeks for people to respond, and then we will make the payments in the following week. So we're looking at about the third week of September for the payments to go. As far as horticulture is concerned, we will be back with you on the 3rd of September, I think, when you meet again to look at the horticultural legislation. And then we will open that scheme. We will allow people a wee bit longer to apply because there's more information to gather up. And I would expect those payments to go out in October.
Okay. Claire, you were looking in again?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Stephen. I suppose I just want to come back to this funding stream has been set up specifically with the criteria that payments will be made when businesses can clearly demonstrate tangible losses. And I just want to ask, is anything being done to take into account any potential COVID support that businesses have been able to avail of to date? Because I know that there's been a disparity across the sector in terms of who has been able to access COVID funding, with some not being able to access any of the support packages to date. So is that going to be taken into account when the department are going to be allocating this extra funding?
Yes, it's already been taken into account. We don't have precise information as to who got other support through self-employed income support, for example, or bounce back loans. But we have tried to ensure that those sectors where we felt there was less likelihood of them obtaining that support would get 100% from us, and where the sectors that were more likely to have got income support then are getting 80%. That's the way we've tried to set up.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, Stephen, thank you very much. I'm not sure if Norman is online again, but thanks to the pair of you for coming along and briefing the members on this. So, I mean, I think the next obvious question then is to ask members if they're content with the merits of the policy and that we should move to the next legislative stage.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I just want to make the point that I know certainly myself and Declan and others within the committee expressed disappointment that maybe it wasn't spread wider within particularly the beef and maybe the sheep sector, but there is additional money there, and we will continue to push to ensure that does go out to others within the agricultural industry who need it, but it's important that we get this money moving to those who need it. So we're all content then that moves on to the next stage. So that's basically Shanae. So the next item then is time and date of next meeting. So the next meeting of the Area Committee will take place on Thursday the 3rd of September, 10 AM, room 30. So thank you all very much for your attendance. I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your holidays.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.